We're back again, another away days. Let's go.
I get those goosebumps every time.
I just have to get the big fella off the bench.
Will this be their last chance now? In it comes, Monster to the front. He scored! Harry Monster scored!
I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too numb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time. I need the hind to throw that to the side, I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. When you're not around, when you throw that to the side, I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. 713 through the 281, yeah, I'm riding. Why they on me outside? Sipping low key and high, I get those goosebumps every time you come around, yeah. You ease my mind, you make everything feel fine. Worry about those times, I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too dumb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time. I need the hype.
Here we go. We're back again. Welcome everyone to Loading Mag NUFC. Back again for another away days. As a preview, the big game, Molyneux away to Wolves. Got the main man with me, Mr. Chris Hall, the old Brandy and Blaze. Didn't do it last time, I don't think.
We didn't do it. No, we didn't.
No, back in business once again. I have to ask you, 24 hours on from the disappointing defeat against Dortmund in the Champions League. How you feeling about it now? Are you kind of over it? You done, or is there still some lingering feelings there, mate, after the game?
Do you know what? It's weird. I don't know whether it's the Eddie Howe factor or whether it's just the fact that, like, I'm so focused on the Premier League, but like for me, it's done. It's done. Disappointing on the night, but I've literally just forgotten all about it now. And my focus now, Pete, is on Wolves at the weekends. And as I say, whether that's because of Eddie Howe and he says, let's just focus on the next game, I don't know. But yeah, that's my mindset. Dortmund's been and gone. One of those things. Could have got something on the day. We didn't, and we move on.
Do you think it'll affect the players? Do you think it will impact on the players in terms of their approach to the game on Saturday in any way?
If anything, I think it will benefit the players because I think that they will have come off that pitch frustrated. Because there was an opportunity there for us to get something against Dortmund, and they will know, and they will probably have felt it themselves, that there was a lot of expectancy and there was a lot of belief that we were going to, get the win last night. So I think the players will want to put that right at the weekend. I know Dave's probably not going to want to hear that, but I think it's important for us now to get back into winning ways. Obviously, our unbeaten run has come to an end in dramatic fashion, but let's try and keep the Premier League one going.
Yeah, definitely. And look, great to have so many of you in the chat. As always, great to have you all in with us. Hold on, I've lost it. There we go. It's back on. Got the likes of Jamie. Welcome into the chat. Got the likes of Jason Scott, Tom Dixon, of course, our spanners in the house. David, great to see you. That picture on his tag is class. It's got the Newcastle badge, got the yellow and the blue there. Quality. Jordan Toon for Life is in there. Connie, great to see you in there as well. PDK, always in the house. And we have a new member, TOON Army. Brilliant to have you on as a member. Great to have you with us. And of course, the guy that hates Goosebumps more than anybody, Jimmy Moore in the house. Great to have him with us. But look, we'll get our guest in because, of course, it's not quite away days without the opposition view, and it's brilliant to welcome back Dave from Talking Wolves. So let's get him in. How you doing, Dave?
I'm very well, guys. Thank you. Thanks for having me back again.
Yeah, it's been a while. So you were one of our first guests, I think, when we first did away days way back a good couple of years ago now. So it's great to have you back on the show and repping Wolves. I mean, look, you guys. How would you assess your season at this moment in time? And what I'll do really quickly is I will just share the screen because I've got the Premier League table here. Don't know if you guys can see that. Yeah.
Yep, just come up, mate.
So yeah, Wolves 12th in the league at the moment. You just mentioned something actually off air, Dave. A win against us on Saturday will put us, what was it, 2 points behind us?
2 points,
yeah, 2 points, yeah.
Behind. How do you assess your season so far?
It's been okay. I mean, considering how disjointed and unorganised our summer and pre-season was, we really didn't know what to expect. And I think the day that Julian Lopetegui said he was leaving Wolves was very negative in the Wolves space. A lot of people saying, well, that's us going down. So considering that has happened and considering the opposition that we face so far, we've already played Brighton, Manchester City, Manchester United, Liverpool. We've played some, really tough teams already. And to be in the position that we are, it's not been a bad start to the season. So, yeah, we're satisfied. Of course, there are some results like Luton, we dropped points against. Palace, we lost to. There are some games where we think, right, we should be doing better there. But on the flip side, beating Manchester City, picking up points against Villa as well. Yeah, it's been an okay start to the season for Gary O'Neill.
Nah, fair play. Chris, how would you assess what Wolves is season so far? Like, how much have you watched of them, and kind of what have you made of them, particularly in the build-up to the big game on Saturday?
Yeah, do you know what they've surprised me, because I must admit I was shocked when Gary O'Neill got appointed. I know Lopetegui was, well, Dave, you could tell me I'm wrong here, but I got the impression that Lopetegui was highly thought of by the Wolves fans. Obviously, prestigious manager, had some big jobs in the past. So for him to then go, you knew that maybe, there was something going on behind the scenes. I'm not sure, but I just wasn't expecting them to bring in Gary O'Neill. I'll be honest, I didn't think he would have been on their radar. But what also concerned me as well, Dave, was, you losing Raul Jimenez. I know he hasn't quite been the same since that horrific injury he had, but still, a top striker. And then did he go to Fulham for was it under 5 million or something like that?
Yeah.
And I was just shocked by that. And I thought, so what are they going to do? Who are they going to bring in? And to me, they didn't recruit as much as what I thought they would. I know they've got Fabio Silva back now, and he went on loan for a bit, didn't he? And he's come back in. But like I say, they've surprised me. And I think Wolves, and they had that fantastic result against Man City recently as well, which again, no one saw coming. So I think they made a reasonable start. And for Wolves, and Dave, tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking now it's just about trying to push yourselves away from that bottom 5, 6, 7 and try and get a nice gap so that, you can start looking up the table rather than looking down. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I would say exactly that. That sort of echoed my comments after the game against Bournemouth. We got quite fortunate in that game, I suppose, because they went down to 10 men, but it's always difficult when you're playing against 10 men for such a long time, because they'll sit 11 men behind the ball. And, they were, we got an early second half goal, but, it was level for so long. But I said that, we especially against a team like Bournemouth, to gain 3 points on them, and because of the start we've had, we should be starting to look up rather than looking over our shoulder. So really positive result. And, going back to sort of what you said, Lopetegui, he knew right at the end of last season what the summer was going to be like. The club made it pretty clear. Look, financially, we're not in a great position. I think they sort of saw what's gone on with Everton, and obviously there's been more news about that this week anyway. Saw what's gone on with Everton financially, and Wolves have basically said, look, we can't get ourselves in that mess. I had to spend a lot of money last January to save the club and give Lopetegui what he needed. And basically, I think Lopetegui didn't like what he heard. I think he expected to go into the summer, loads of cash, build a really good team, which I have no doubt he would have done. And it just took Wolves too long, basically, to gain the funds that he needed. And I think, albeit it was late, I think he just said, look, I'm not waiting any longer. He went. Frustratingly, a lot of the players like the Jimenezes that you mentioned, Nathan Collins, a lot of those were players that Lopetegui didn't like, and that's why we cashed in on them. And then obviously Gary O'Neill came in. We cashed in on Núñez, which gave us the funds to sort of strengthen the squad in areas. So I think overall the squad is a lot better. We lost some great players, Neves, who we expected to lose, but players like Adama, Coutinho, Jimenez weren't really automatic starters. So they're no major loss at the moment. But that's why I think so many Wolves fans are satisfied at the moment, because it was such a disjointed summer. We feared the worst, really.
So, from your perspective, why is there been sort of a downturn with regards to finances? Because it wasn't long ago that you guys were setting the record in the championship, spending 20 million on Ruben Neves and kind of splashing that cash. Like, what has been the downturn for that to be in the position where you're now saying to Lopetegui, we haven't got that sort of money to spend and continue to build and develop on your team? From a fan looking inside to the club, like, what do you think the reason is for that?
I think it's mainly a lot of the money that we've spent, we haven't probably spent as wisely as we should have done. And strangely, you could say fortunately at times, Wolves haven't really had to cash in. So you see like teams like Villa have obviously spent a lot of money, but they sold Grealish for a huge amount of money and sold other players that have sort of made up that sort of margin. Whereas Wolves, really, we signed Neves for 15 million back in the Championship and expected him to be there 1 or 2 years, sell him for like 40, 50 million. And we held on to him for like 6 years. So that's sort of where it is. Like, I think Fosun, who the owners came into the club thinking, right, we'll sign these players and we'll look to sell them on. But we almost fell in love with these players and it's very hard. And you guys have probably had it at Newcastle similar, where almost the player's value is a lot more than what clubs are actually offering for him. So we had the sales like Jota who went, that sort of helped with that. But then we've had signings like Gonzalo Guedes last season. We spent over 30 million on him, was loaned out 6 months later because he was a load of rubbish. Fabio Silva, I'm desperate for it to work with him, but spent over 30 million pounds on him. Again, just hasn't got the return. So frustratingly, it's obviously a lot of it is the impact of George Mendes, but they've basically spent too much money and not got the return. Adama was one as well. We spent, at the time, it seemed like a big risk. I think it was about 18 million pounds on him when he was at Middlesbrough. And after first year, he was a load of rubbish. Second year, he really, he lit up and played fantastically in Europe. And there were, rumours, could Wolves get 60, 70, 80 million for this guy? Bit quieter the season after, could have got 30 million. And just the whole recruitment system, Wolves should have cashed in on him that January and they loaned him out to Barcelona. I think on the, a gentleman's agreement that Barca would sign him, and Barca actually said, nah, it's all right, we don't want him now. So we've got a player back with 12 months left on his deal. And it ultimately left on a free. So this transfer and recruitment structures changed a lot of Wolves, but I think there's a lot of areas that they will regret, and they have probably lost out on money over the last few years because of that. And that's why we're in the position that we're in.
No, it's interesting. It's interesting to see because, like, there are so many teams, Chris, like Wolves' situation, and Dave's touched on it. Like with Villa, for example, like Villa have they've got the Grealish money that they're probably still using in order to buy players, but you have these teams that look like they're really going to go places. Wolves were pushing top 4 like not long ago, around sort of the COVID times, and then it's almost like those funds kind of like start to kind of like eat away, and it's hard to kind of maintain, particularly like Dave said, if you're not being able to sell sort of certain players. We're not going to have that sort of concern with the money that we know our owners have got, or is that could that be a possibility later on down the line?
I mean, you can never say never, can you, Pete? I mean, we I think it's the worst kept secret that we're probably the richest club in the world. But that is on the proviso that we have owners who are invested in the club, owners that want to put money into the club. As far as we're aware at this present moment, that is the case. And, we're very fortunate and very lucky with that. But who's to say 2, 3, 4 years down the line, the PIF turn around and go, do you know what, we've done everything we can do, or, they fall out of love with the project. I'm not trying to scaremonger anybody, but there's no reason to say that can't happen. So I think we've just got to try and, ride the wave, so to speak, and enjoy it. And hopefully put ourselves in as best position as we can, so that if that was to happen, which hopefully it doesn't, but if it was to happen, as a club, both financially, structurally, we're as sound as we can possibly be. But yeah, as Wolves have shown and other clubs in the past, things can change very quickly. I mean, on the flip side, look at someone like Chelsea. They had that influx of money. When Abramovich first came in, they bought all the players they wanted. Then they kind of, stayed near the top, were winning stuff, and then they dipped a little bit. And then Abramovich left, and then they had that period where, some people were saying they were days from going into liquidation and disappearing. And then Todd Bowley's come in, he's thrown even more money at it, but it hasn't come to fruition as yet. So sometimes, you can't always bank on, lots and lots of money, potentially improving your club, taking your club forwards, winning your trophies. So football is unpredictable, if anything. So for us, not saying it can't happen, Pete, but a betting man would say that you'd like to think that Newcastle are in a pretty safe position, and that hopefully we're only going to get bigger and better, and hopefully start putting some silverware in the trophy cabinet.
Definitely. Let's look at Wolves. So I was asked on another pod just before I came on here, certain players who I was taking in January. We always do this every so often. We've talked about it from a loaded perspective. We think we're going to sign in January. Now, it's hypothetical, of course, January or the summer. And there was one person who was named by somebody else, actually, a Chelsea fan, who they like. Potts, the Arsenal fan, said he would take him at Arsenal as well. And it was this guy. Talk to us about your sensational player who's performing really, really well at the moment, Pedro Neto.
Yeah, it's been a really good start to the season for Neto. I think you could tell we signed him a few years ago. He was a very raw player. I think it was when we just broken into Europe, actually. And he came off the bench, had games in that Europa League season. He just looked like a really exciting young player, but still very raw. Still lacked a bit of composure. I still remember to this day in the first season we were 4-1 up against Espanyol in the Europa League, and we went over to Spain in the second leg. I think it was 2-2 at the time, and he rounded the goalkeeper and put it over the bar. And it's just little moments like that. You think, if he starts putting, did all the hard work, if he starts putting chances like that away, you've got like a really good player. And then it seems like the last 2 or 3 years, he's been by far our best player in pre-season, and then struggles to start well or gets a long-term injury. He's had a couple of long-term injuries over the last couple of years, and just really struggled to get going. Even last season, really strong pre-season. Arsenal linked with him, had 2 or 3 games and then out for sort of 3 or 4 months. But this season, again, unbelievable pre-season. I thought, right, we can't get too overexcited, but my word, he started off this season, looked sharper, quicker, fitter than ever. Not scared. I think the issue was last season, he's come back from a long-term injury. He's almost scared to take on his man. Whereas this season, he's just full of confidence. I think already he's on 5 or 6 assists. I think 6 assists in the Premier League already, top assist maker in the league. And I'm confident we'll keep him around until at least the end of the season. I think he will stay in January. But I think if he can continue with the goal contributions consistently before the end of the campaign, I think Wolves could be demanding a decent sum of money for him.
Definitely. Chris, Pedro Neto, would you take him at Newcastle? I'm sorry, Dave, I'm kind of like setting off the players here, but like Pedro Neto, what do you think about him as a player? And would you have him as an alternative option for Miguel Almiron?
Yes. I can't remember which show it was, Pete. You have to remind me. It was a very recent one, wasn't it? And we were talking about Neto because I think I mentioned that when I must have been talking about Liverpool, because I said that when Liverpool signed Diogo Jota, a lot of Liverpool fans were bemused as to why they didn't go for Pedro Neto. And I think, do you know what, it could have even been Dave, we could have even been chatting to Dave about it, because I remember speaking to a Wolves fan as well and saying, like, yous were all quite happy that it was Diogo Jota that went rather than Neto, because Neto looked the better prospect. I mean, whenever I've seen him, he always looks dangerous. And I know, am I correct in saying, Dave, that he predominantly plays on the right, but he does cut in a lot? Is that fair to say? Yeah,
I mean, he's had a lot of success on the right. I always preferred him on the left. And right at the start of the season, I raised concerns about him playing on the right. But the last few weeks, he's stuck to the right. And he's been phenomenal on there, to be fair. So, yeah, he's on the right cutting in. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that is unfortunately, like... When I say unfortunately, that's the kind of problem that we have with Miggy Almiron, you see, Dave, because Miggy Almiron's a left footer and he plays on the right. Now, Miggy cannot use his right foot whatsoever. So Miggy Almiron constantly cuts in on his left, but his fullback must just really enjoy it, because any half decent fullback will know that that's exactly what he's intending to do, because he's never going to show you down, towards the byline. And it would just be fantastic, and I'm sure people agree with this, if we had somebody who was comfortable on either side. And I do think that is something that we're lacking incredibly. And when we see Jacob Murphy play on the right instead of Miggy Almiron, we're getting balls whipped in. We're seeing, him actually running to the byline and putting crosses in. It's nice to see, and that is something we miss. And I must admit, whenever I see Pedro Neto, I do think he would look good in the back of my shirt. I really do, because I think he's a great age. Is he a great age, Pete? I think it's fair to say he must be a great age. He's got to be.
Is he
24, maybe, I'd guess.
23, 24, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me have a quick look. I'm sure he's 23.
There we go.
23, yeah.
23.
great
Yeah.
age?
I live with that. So yeah, I mean, I hate to sound like we're trying to pluck players from you, Dave, but if there was an opportunity for us to sign Pedro Neto, I would be very, very happy with that. Out of interest, Dave, if we were to maybe go for him, what do you think? And Pete, sorry if this was your next question. What do you think the Wolves hierarchy would want, or what where would the bidding war start at, would you say?
It really depends, obviously, the stage of the season and how his form carries on. I think, look, he's not going to carry on with a goal contribution every other game, I don't think. If he does, that would be, he's on 15, 20 assists or goals. That'd be a phenomenal record. I've seen Wolves fans say if he carries on at the end of the season, you can be demanding 100 million. I think that's way too high. But I think certainly you've got to be looking towards that sort of at least 50, 60 million bracket again. At least, really. I mean, Wolves' record for transfer received was Núñez from City. That was just under 50 million, I think. So they'll probably be looking over that again. I think 60 million is enough for Wolves to be happy. And this is what I was talking about earlier. I think, we signed him for under 20 million pounds. If 3 or 4 years later you could turn that around and get 60, 70 million for him, that's what the Wolves recruitment and board are going to start to look at a little bit more. But like going back to what we were saying about him cutting inside, he does do that, but I think he's having a lot of joy at the moment just purely because of his pace and skill. He's beating the fullback first and then sort of running down the byline. That's how he scored a great individual goal, although it's gone down as an own goal against City. And the week after against Villa did the exact same thing, beat Pau Torres and did the exact same thing. So no disrespect to Dan Burn, because he's a great defender, but because of his lack of pace, I think if Neto does get the right side of him, it could be a really intriguing battle on that wing on Saturday evening. Definitely,
yeah. We've had many a conversation about Dan Burn and his pace. We talked about it before because it is a concern because he isn't the fastest. But what I will say in his defence is that he's come up against some tricky, pacey players before, and he's managed to deal with it. And he's managed to handle it really well. Now, part of that is, and we'll look at that when we get to sort of like the tactics ball, but part of that is because of the protection he has around him, whether it's Botman, whether it's from a midfielder like Joe Linton, or Bruno or Sean Longstaff that goes over and kind of like doubles up. But we do tend to deal with things well. But like you said, a one-on-one, he has been. There was a young winger, I can't remember his name now, but Burnley, he got in behind a few times at St James's Park and
Koleosho.
Yeah, Koleosho. That was him, and he used his pace to get in behind a few times, so it can happen. But yeah, it will be an interesting battle for sure. Yeah, but it'll be interesting to watch him play. I mean, for me, I don't know if you agree, Chris. In terms of a fee, I think if we put in something like a 50 million bid rising, I think that would be a good deal, and it would reflect the move and the progression that Neto's made. But something like that, I think you're more than right to demand that type of fee for him, because that's the type of player he is. And like you said, 23 years old, he's going to get better, and that fee will go up. But yeah, look, he's a Wolves player. He's playing fantastically well. I think he's joint top with Trippier with 6 assists, if I'm right in thinking.
Wow.
think Trippier's got 6. He's got 5. I think he might have 6 because
Be close anyway. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
Murphy on Saturday. So, but even so, both of them are playing fantastically well. And Neto in particular is taking the Premier League by storm. That is for sure. Another player, this player here, he's kind of been in and out of your team all over the place, but he seems to have kind of settled down and nailed it himself into the team is a more regular recently, and he scored a few goals. What impact has he had this season on Wolves? Is sort of like performances this season?
Yeah, Hwang has been very, very good. And like you said, he's sort of been in and out ever since he joined the club. Really, he seems a little bit injury prone. He was awful for me in the first season. Struggled last season as well. Because he's actually on loan in the first season with an option to buy, and Wolves triggered it really early. Because I think one of the reasons is, like, in terms of marketing for a Korean player, like it was Wolves had it with Jimenez, the Mexicans. They had such a mad reaction from Mexico, then signed Hwang and had the same from South Korea. So I think the Wolves marketing team were rubbing their hands together, but it didn't actually set the world alight, to be honest, and struggled last season as well. And I thought he's a good player. I think that we paid just under £15 million. I think it's a good fee for a player in the Premier League. But this season, Gary O'Neill's trusted him, and I think I never thought he was a bad finisher. I think he scored once or twice against you guys a couple of years ago. I think it was the last game under Mike Ashley, probably for you guys. Actually, I think he scored a couple of goals.
He did. I was going to bring it up, Dave. I was going to bring it up because I was like the one thing I remember him for. He scored. I think he scored 2 that day.
Yeah, both really nice finishes.
Rainy day at Molineux when you guys. It was my birthday weekend and it ruined my weekend. And then my weekend after that, my week lit up because we then had the takeover. A few days later.
Yeah, so I mean, but he's just been in and out and injuries. But this season, he's either played on the left or on the right. Gary O'Neill's really trusted him a lot more. He's got involved a lot more, and just seems to be the right player at the right time. And him and Neto are sort of almost creating this sort of chemistry and partnership that we saw years ago under like Jimenez and Adama. And I think our top goal scorers last season were Pedence and Neves in all competitions with just 6 goals. And Hwang's already on that already. So it just proves for us we've struggled massively to score goals. And we've scored in all bar 1 game so far this season, scoring a couple of goals in a few games. So we're really improving on that front. And Hwang's a big part of that as well.
Definitely. Another player before we move on to the next section, a player that Chris likes to talk about because I know you've talked about him before. This man, Ait-Nouri. How is he progressing at Wolves? Because there was a time where he was in, he was out, he was in again. Is he kind of nailing himself down in the squad, in the first team, playing regular? For those that don't watch Wolves as regular as some, how is he progressing?
Yeah, again, Ait-Nouri is an interesting one because we signed him, I think, in Nuno's last year. We actually signed him on loan with an option to buy, and he was. Remember, we've been linked with him for years. I think he was actually obviously a young French lad, plays for Algeria now, but he was a George Mendes client as well, and just really, really highly rated as a left back. And we were linked with him for a long time. Managed to get him on loan with an option. And it got to the end of that season. It was during COVID as well, so everyone had to be watching their finances. And we had a choice of basically, can we sign this guy, Rayan Ait-Nouri, who's done okay in her first season as a teenager in England? Or we had another guy called Vitinha, who's now gone on to play for PSG for the same fee, he struggled under Nuno. And Wolves actually went for Ait-Nouri. Obviously, Wolves fans now, you can look at everything in hindsight, but Vitinha obviously has gone on to bigger and better things. But Ait-Nouri has been a very good player for Wolves. You can see there's a talented lad in there. I don't think Bruno Lage liked him a huge amount because he works well in the back 5, but I think off the pitch he's really lazy in terms of turning up to matches late and so on like that. But Lopetegui really disliked him. Lopetegui came in just after a young lad called Hugo Bueno was introduced into the team. And obviously with him being Spanish, Lopetegui just clicked with him and Bueno seemed to get the nod. And there were huge rumours that Ait-Nouri was going to get sold this summer because obviously Lopetegui didn't like him. But he's pretty much been a mainstay under Gary O'Neill and really kicked on. I think even last week against Bournemouth, He just looked confident. The way he was moving the ball around, he's really skillful, tricky young fullback. And yeah, I'm really excited to see how he can progress this season, because this could be a year he really takes off.
Chris, have you been on Ait-Nouri watch? You've been keeping an eye on him?
Do you know what? I haven't actually, Pete, which is a shame, really, because in case you didn't know, Dave, like I watched, I think it was last season. Was it early part of last season? And I've seen him a few times, and I thought, this lad looks good. He looks like a prospect. Very, very raw, because there was occasions where I watch him and think, oh, like he's still got a lot to learn. But again, I think, is he 19, 20? He's not.
He's very young still, yeah.
Yeah, he is, isn't he? I think he's 19, 20, I'd say.
22 now, a little bit older, yeah.
Oh, 22, okay.
Yeah.
All right. But yeah, I think he's a prospect. I think he's someone who could end up getting a big move. But it's all about the consistency with him, isn't it? It's about him being consistent. And if he gets this one in the team under Gary O'Neill, and he's continued to play well, he could be another one, possibly, Dave. That you cash in on, because I'm sure there will be some Wolves fans, in the sense that he's a little bit Marmite. Sometimes he looks absolutely brilliant, and then other times you think maybe you could do with more of a bit of a steady Eddie, so to speak, because he is a bit of a maverick. That's certainly the impression I get anyway, but very, very talented.
The one thing with Ait-Nouri, I would say, is I'd say whenever we play a top team, he keeps them quiet. I don't think Mohamed Salah, especially at Molly, has ever had a good game against Rayan Ait-Nouri. We lost to Liverpool a couple of years ago, 1-0, and Ait-Nouri kept Salah quiet for about 88 minutes and then pulled up and got subbed off. And we brought the young lad Keanu Hoover on, and he lost the ball, and Salah puts it on a play. I think Origi got the winner in the end. But players like Salah really struggle against him. But yeah, he's a really good player, a little bit unpredictable at times, like you said, still quite raw, but a player where, again, if he has a really good season, could demand 40, 50 million in the current market. He's that good.
Yeah.
Interesting. We're going to switch to Newcastle now, because we've got a bit of a crisis on our hands. I'm not going to lie. And Dad put this picture on that went around on socials. We've got an injury crisis. Lots of players out at the moment. We knew about Harvey Barnes is not going to be back till 2024. We now know that Sandro Tonali has got a 10-month ban, so his season is effectively over. He won't be back until the beginning of next season. But we then have had an injury hit 24 hours or so, because not only was Elliot Anderson not in the squad and has been ruled out for the next 3 weeks, we got 2 injuries in the short space of time during the game at Dortmund. We've got 14 minutes out of Alexander Isak until his groin went, so he's now not going to be back until after the international break. And we have Jacob Murphy, who dislocated his shoulder, who is not now probably likely to be back until the beginning of next year. And we're praying that Sven Botman will be back sometime soon. Chris, what is going on? And, are you worried about the defensive crisis at the moment, or not defensive crisis, but the squad crisis at the moment with the players that are out injured?
I'm not worried. I'm not overjoyed by it. I'm not going to lie, but I'm not too worried, because I think we've got adequate replacements. My worry will be if there's another 2 or 3, because then I think we will really, really struggle. We were only saying, weren't we, Pete? Was it a couple of weeks ago that like our squad, the depth in our squad is actually surprisingly okay. I know we're missing a few key players there, as you pointed out, and the big players. I mean, even if you look at that graphic, you're talking hundreds of millions of pounds worth of players, and any club would miss that. But I'm not too nervous at the moment, and I think as long as we wrap the players in cotton wool and Eddie Howe is clever with the management of the minutes for the players that we have remaining, who are fit to play, I think we'll be okay. I mean, a couple of those players aren't too far away from coming back. I don't imagine Elliot Anderson will be too long out. Botman hopefully won't be too far away. We've just got Joe Willock back. So, I think we can manage it, but don't get me wrong, it's not a great place to be in. But I've not hit the panic button just yet. But I will do if we play Wolves at the weekend and we come away with a couple more injuries. So hopefully that doesn't happen, and that's not the case.
Definitely. Well, we pray for no more injuries, but
Yeah.
we've now got to put the pressure on the likes of Callum Wilson to play week in, week out for this next period of time, which is not easy. It's going to be difficult, but we're going to have to really lean on some players to be playing, against Wolves, against Man United in the Cup, against Arsenal, and then against Bournemouth before the international break. And I think we've got Dortmund away in between that too. So lots of games to be played, and players are going to be having to give absolutely everything until the next international break. So it's going to be really, really interesting. But with those players aside, Dave, anyone else kind of stick out for you that you're sort of worried about coming to Molineux on Saturday evening, mate?
I think the interesting one will be the midfield battle. I know obviously Newcastle. If you look at the Newcastle team, this isn't any disrespect to you guys. You look at it on paper, and it probably, the bigger teams are thinking, well, we should walk over these. But I think the way that Eddie Howe's got you playing, and the quality of football, and sort of the morale and momentum that Newcastle have had over the sort of last 12 to 18 months, you're probably one of the toughest teams to play, in England at the moment. So it's going to be a tough test. That's why I think the midfield battle, I'd assume you'd have like a midfield three, for argument's sake, that includes Joe Linton and Bruno Guimaraes. I think for us, Mario Lemina will play with either young lad João Gomez or Boubacar Traoré. And I think that's really where the game could be won or lost. And down the wide areas as well, I think Trippier is obviously a phenomenal player. Wolves have, touch wood, have dealt well with defensive set pieces so far this season. And that's why that will be an interesting battle. And we've played really well counter-attacking football. And I think even if the likes of Dan Burn creeps forward, or even Trippier, it could be really interesting to see how quick Wolves can counter. But in terms of quality, Newcastle have obviously got it all over the pitch. Callum Wilson, is a fantastic forward when he can keep himself fit. Anthony Gordon, as well as the player that he struggled a little bit against us at Everton last year, but just kept getting himself in the right sort of areas. And I think a fitter and more confident Anthony Gordon will cause Wolves a lot of problems on Saturday.
Definitely, yeah. We hope that's the case. But we've been really, really impressed with Anthony Gordon, Chris, haven't we? He's been doing a fantastic job this season. Another really good game, to be fair to him, last night against Dortmund. Although we didn't win, he still played well, and we've got the likes of Sean Longstaff putting in good performances. Wasn't at the level that we wanted him to be against Dortmund, but still putting in top performances and playing well. But hopefully we'll have these two back fit and firing together, Joe Linton and Willock on midfield. But we'll save that until the lineups, because I'm interested to hear what Chris has got lined up for Newcastle. I'm interested. Yeah, what Keith's going to critique you on. But look, we'll get down to the match day stuff. And as always, it's important that we have a look at some stats. But it's Halloween, so let's go back to the original.
Darkness falls across the land. The midnight hour is close at hand. Creatures crawl in search of blood to terrorize your neighborhood. And whosoever shall be found without the soul for getting down must stand and face the hounds of hell and rot inside a corpse's shell. The foulest stench is in the air, the funk of 40,000 years, and grisly ghouls from every tomb are closing in to seal your doom. And though you fight to stay alive, your body starts to shiver, for no mere mortal can resist the evil of the thriller.
Evening, lads.
Like magic, he appears. I love at the end now. It's just like it's the Keith's picture around all the zombies, and he's got the biggest smile on his face. He's so happy.
Yeah,
You've got to bring Emma back for Halloween. It just wouldn't be the same without it, would it? Really, probably one of the most played songs during Halloween, along with the Backstreet Boys, bizarrely.
Ooh.
Yeah,
the old classic Backstreet Boys. You're absolutely right. But Keith, more importantly, it's great to have you on away days and joining us for the show. Double O Stato, what stats have you got for us this week? Wolves against Newcastle, mate.
Got a load of stats here, particularly a lot of general stats about both clubs towards the end, but got some head-to-head stats. Got some stats on the goalkeepers, how they shape up, and some stats on the players as well as the manager stats as well. So Newcastle, they've won 4 of 16 Premier League games that they've played against Wolves. Quite evenly matched these Premier League stats: 4 wins, 10 draws, and 2 defeats. Newcastle have had against Wolves. Newcastle's record against Wolves at Molineux, going back to 1990, 2 wins, 6 draws, and 4 defeats. Newcastle have got the better goal scoring record in this fixture in the Premier League. They've scored 22 goals compared to Wolves' 17. They've got a slightly better defensive record. They've actually got 1 clean sheet, whereas Wolves haven't got a clean sheet in this fixture in all Premier League games they've faced. 6 of Newcastle's 8 Premier League away games against Wolves have ended in a 1-1 draw. And our favourite score. Newcastle's last Premier League win at Molineux was a 2-0, 2-1 win 12 years ago in October, and it was Demba Ba and Jonas Gutierrez who got the winning goals in that fixture. Moving on to the goalkeepers, Nick Pope's clean sheets this season. He's kept 3 in 9 games that he's played against Wolves. Jose Sarr has 1 clean sheet in 9 Premier League games for Wolves this season. He's never kept a clean sheet, however, in the 4 games he's played against Newcastle. Moving on to the players, you were talking there about Callum Wilson, who I believe is underrated. Callum Wilson, we've all been bigging up Alexander Isak, and quite rightly so, for the skill that he has in some of his goals. But he has some stats about Wilson as well to back up Wilson. Callum Wilson scored his 43rd Premier League goal for Newcastle last weekend, equaling the tallies of Andy Cole and Shola Ameobi. Only Alan Shearer with 148 Premier League goals and Peter Beardsley with 46 Premier League goals have scored more goals for Newcastle in the Premier League than Wilson. And Callum Wilson is averaging a goal every 66 minutes in the Premier League. This season, 5 goals in 330 minutes. So he has the best goal scoring rate of any player to have played at least 90 minutes so far this season. Moving on to some stats here for Wolves players. Pedro Neto, his assist for Mateus Cunha's goal, that was his 6th assist in the Premier League this season. No player has more assists to his name this season, and it's his joint best so far in a campaign so far. He's previously matched that with 6 in the 2020-21 season. Only 4 Wolves players have provided more goal-scoring assists in a season than Pedro Neto has. Kevin Doyle, remember him? In 2011-12, 7 goal-scoring assists. Raul Jimenez, in 2018-19 season, he had 7 goal-scoring assists as well. João Moutinho, in 2018-19, he had 8 goal-scoring assists. And Adama Traore, in 2019-20, he had 9 goal-scoring assists. Moving on to the managers, Eddie Howe's managerial record against Wolves in the Premier League. He's managed 9 games against Wolves. He's won 4, he's drawn 2, and he's lost 3. Gary O'Neill is undefeated in games he's managed against Newcastle United. Both games last season that he managed against Newcastle in his time at Bournemouth, they both ended in a draw. And some general stats to round off. No team has won more home games than Newcastle in the Premier League this season with 4. And it's the first time since 2007-8 season that Newcastle have won as many as 4 in their opening home 5 home games in the Premier League. Newcastle have scored 24 goals in 9 Premier League games so far this season. And that's the most at any stage of the campaign since 1994-95 season, when they had 26 goals. Newcastle have also have the highest shot conversion rate with over 18%, 18.9%. They have the most big chances, 37, and they have the highest big chance conversion with 54.1% in the Premier League this season. So they're top on all of the right lists really here. And last Saturday's match against Crystal Palace was the 5th time that Newcastle have led by 3 or more goals at half time in the Premier League under Eddie Howe. Last match was Eddie Howe's 74th league match for Newcastle. Only Kevin Keegan, under Kevin Keegan of Newcastle, scored 3 or more goals as many times in the Premier League. And that was, with Keegan, it was 5 times in 162 games. After losing 4 of their first 5 Premier League matches, Wolves have been unbeaten in the last 4 Premier League matches, 2 wins and 2 draws, in a run where they've also beaten Manchester City, and they've drawn with an in-form Aston Villa as well. And that's the longest unbeaten one Wolves have been on without defeat since January 2022, which was 5 games. And that rounds off the stats tonight.
Great stats as always, Key. Great stuff. Some mixed stats there, I have to say. Some good stats for Wolves and some good stats for Newcastle, that's for sure. Nice to have them balanced. We've had so many, Chris, you know, we've had so many where it's been tipped the other way for Newcastle. So it's nice to have them a little bit balanced there. But great stats as always. Now, what I want to do, because I know we're short on time, particularly with yourself, Dave, is I want to come to if it works, it should do. Yeah, there we go. I want to come to the old lineups board, and I'll come to you first. Now, I think I've got everyone in the squad available for Wolves. Now, who is your first 11 that you're going for the game on Saturday?
I think I could probably predict all bar one player for Saturday. So obviously it would be Jose Sarri in goal for me. Had a couple of shaky moments throughout the season and so on, but if I'm honest, by far, no disrespect to the goalkeepers, by far the better player. I think it'll be 5. Go on, sorry.
Is it back 3?
Yeah, back 3. So if we go to the 3 centre halves, left centre back will be Totti Gomez, number 24. Centre back will be Craig Dawson, number 15, and then the right centre back will be Max Kilman, 23. Yeah. Again, those 3. Totti, it's good for him to get a chance. Craig Dawson, been solid, but got found out a little bit when Gary O'Neill was trying to sort of high line back 4. Max Kilman, again, a little bit shaky, but looks fantastic. Back in the back 3 again. Wolves rejected 30+ million from Napoli for him in the summer. So, you know, it's good to have him obviously playing much better football. Right wing back, I think it'll be Semedo, number 22. Again, he was suspended last week, so it'll be nice to have him back in the team, hopefully fresh and fit. And left wing back will be Ait-Nouri, number well, it's 22 again. I don't know what numbers they are, but yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what squad numbers they are even, so don't worry. The midfield 2 will be an interesting one for me because I think Lamina, number 5, he was suspended last week, but I think he'll come back in. Next to him, Wolves have tended to play João Gomez, but I think he had a good performance last week. Boubacar Traoré, number 6, I think he'll start alongside Lamina as a middle 2. And then the front 3 will be Neto, number 7 on the right. Hwang, number 11 on the left. And then Mateus Cunha, number 12, through the centre, I assume.
On the left, sorry.
Yeah. So
okay.
I think the only position that I'm unsure about is whether Boubacar Traoré will play. If he doesn't, it'll be João Gomez. But other than that, I'm pretty sure that'll be the Wolves team for Saturday.
Interesting. A different type of setup there. I'm going to move these around a little bit. She's got back three. Does anyone out of the two play deeper than the other? Does Lamina play deeper than Traore, or are they both?
Yeah, I would say so. That sort of Lamine is more of a sort of defensive-minded player. Boubacar Traore is, he's a really tall, sort of defensive-minded midfielder, but really athletic as well. A bit more of a box-to-box midfielder. That's sort of what I was saying earlier. They're both quite big, well-built midfielders, and that's why I think Boubacar will probably suit the game a little bit more than João Gomez, especially quite physical and talented Newcastle middle three.
Sasek Kalajic not going to start. He scored the winner.
The two players that I think Wolves fans will be talking about is Sasha Kalajdzic, who's, again, going back to sort of Keith's comment about Callum Wilson. Kalajdzic has played about 50 minutes of football for Wolves and scored 2 goals, both winning goals as well, coming off the bench. But he hasn't, I don't think he's played a full 90 minutes yet, and that's why that sort of Wilson stat stands. So fans will talk about Kalajdzic. I just think he's not one-dimensional at all. I think he's a very talented player, but I think in this sort of game where Wolves will have to counter-attack, I think he'll restrict us slightly. I think he'll definitely come off the bench and get at least 20 minutes, though. And then the other player would be Tommy Doyle, who came off the bench against Bournemouth and just completely changed the game. He was phenomenal. But again, I just don't think he's a player that's ready to start and physically ready for this battle against Newcastle. And that's why I think Gary O'Neill will go with this team.
I didn't mention it earlier, but did you watch Monday Night Football, Dave, with O'Neill talking about with Jamie Carragher? I thought it was fascinating the way he talked about the structure of his team, the tactics, the way in which he trained his team to beat Man City and one or two other teams as well. I thought it was fascinating. But did you manage to watch it and what did you think? Because he did big up Tommy Doyle a lot. Against Bournemouth.
Yeah, no, I watched it. It was really good. Obviously, quite a lot of Wolves fans are saying, he's giving away all our secrets. What is it?
I think that.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think obviously that training session they showed was sort of specific to the Bournemouth game. Obviously the City game, they showed the stats. I think we scored 2 goals. We had 1 shot on target throughout the game. So I don't think there was much to say. I think he just sort of said how he kept Haaland quiet, really. So I think if anything, is going to show a lot of head coaches and managers in the Premier League, like, right, this guy, we can't take, this guy's serious, he knows what he's doing. So, but yeah, it was great. And hopefully we see a lot more sort of players or head coaches go onto Sky and do a similar thing, because I think it's fascinating for football fans to sort of, look at that sort of side of the game.
From a tactical point, I loved it. I thought it was great. And it was great because he had the videos of what he was doing in training.
Yeah.
And then he showed the videos of what he was doing
in the match. The exact same thing. It was brilliant. Yeah, that was really good.
Thing happening in matches, and I just thought it was fascinating. I did, as I just said, I did think he was giving away too much. I don't know if I'd be happy with Eddie Howe doing that on Monday Night Football, but it was interesting nonetheless. But your team's out there. It's in place. Now I know you've got to go very shortly, Dave. In a few minutes, so I'll just get Chris to put the team out for Newcastle. I'll get your opinion on that, and then I'll get your prediction before you go. Is that okay?
No problem. Yeah, sure, man. No problem.
Right, Chris, fella, the team is on you. What are you going for this week?
Do you know what I was saying before, wasn't I? It might be difficult, but in actual fact, there's not that many options, so it shouldn't be too difficult. So I think I'll go obviously with Nick Pope in goal.
Yeah.
I'll say Kevin Trippier right back. I'm not going to mention Livramento this week.
Yeah.
I think it will be Jamal Lascelles right centre back, Fabian Schär left centre back, and Dan Burn left back.
Okay. Cool.
The midfield 3, in my opinion, will be Bruno Gomes in the holding position.
Bruno, where is it? Where's it gone? There it is.
Yeah. Joe Linton on the left of the midfield 3.
Big Joe.
On the right will be Sean Longstaff.
Yeah.
And then up top for me now pretty much picks itself. Bearing in mind our left winger, our right winger, and other striker option are all out. So therefore, I think it's got to be Gordon on the left,
Yep.
Wilson through the middle,
Big count.
and Miggy Amaron on the right.
Spot on. So there's the team. Before you go, Dave, because I know you've got another pod to get onto. Looking at those teams, where do you think Wolves can get at Newcastle United? You've obviously talked about Pedro Neto, particularly from before, but is there any other way in which you guys create your goals? Is there a set piece? Is there a certain style of play that you play that might cause us problems in the game, in your opinion?
I think it's on the counter attack. That's what Wolves' strength is, and I think it's never like an easy time to play Newcastle. But I think this weekend could be better than ever, really, in terms of the players that you got out injured or suspended or whatever. And again, I'm not religious. I don't watch Newcastle for 90 minutes every weekend, but sort of from an outsider looking at that back four, I think Newcastle have got a better back four overall, and that would be available if suspensions and injuries weren't a thing. So I think the Shah and the Sells combination, obviously, they've played well, they've played together in the Champions League and done well enough, but I do think, Wolves can get at those pair. I think if we can catch Trippier bombing forward or off a set piece and counter-attacking, Hwang and Neto, and even Kunyu's a super talented player on the ball, could have that little bit of joy. But I think it is going to be that midfield area, Joelinton, Bruno, Longstaff is a busy player, likes to get around as well. I think Wolves have just got to try and get control of the ball, calm the game down, and hope that the counter-attacking and Pedro Neto's on his A game, and hopefully other players like Ait-Nouri and Semedo, everyone's got to be on their A game for Wolves to get a positive result. But I think with the injuries and stuff that you guys have got, it's going to be a tough challenge, but definitely again, the Wolves can try their best to get something out of.
I think I might be wrong here, but I think I saw a stat that you guys have conceded quite a few goals from set pieces this season. Is that right?
I don't think we've conceded one. That might be what it is. I think we haven't conceded any.
Sorry, it might be the other way around.
Yeah,
I think I'm thinking of another team that's conceded a lot of goals.
I'm sure we haven't. I'm not sure. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
It could be one or the other. It's either you've not conceded from set pieces or you have. But I thought that was really, really interesting, because I think set pieces might well be crucial in that situation, either for or against Newcastle from that. And I'm looking at your back three and I'm thinking, have they really conceded a lot from set pieces? Because you've got Kilman, you've got Dawson, both that I know are good in the air. Totti I know a little bit less about, but I'm thinking those guys are likely to keep things out. So it could well be that you're right, that actually you've not from set pieces, but that's where potentially Trippier could come in, because although set pieces weren't great, he's got a lot of his assists from really good deliveries into the box. To cause problems for the opposition, going back to Sheffield United as a case in point. But be really, really interesting to see how that goes on. But just before you go, what is your prediction, Dave, for the game on Saturday, mate?
To be fair, I said on my preview, I'm hoping, I think my heart is saying a 2-1 Wolves win. But I don't think it would be that easy. I would take a point right now. I think both teams to score 1-1 is probably going to be quite a popular and safe bet for a lot of people based on history, based on both how both teams are playing. But I know Newcastle fans will probably be going into this game and thinking, there will be a percentage of Newcastle fans disappointed to not come away with 3 points. But Wolves at home have been very, very good for the last 12 months. We're on a 4-match unbeaten run. So, I think it's going to be a tough game for both sides, but yeah, I'll be reasonable. I'll say a 1-1 draw, and I think I'd take that before the game.
Interesting. Dave, it's been a pleasure to have you back on after a while.
Thank you, guys.
We'll definitely get you back on again soon to talk all things Wolves. And yeah, just plug your channel before we go.
Yeah, it's at Talking Wolves, guys. So if you want to see my thoughts ahead of the game or even after the game, obviously I'll give my thoughts. So if Newcastle beat us, you can see me upset probably in my car after the game, or we do the fans react as well. So we get quite a few Wolves fans just giving their thoughts on the match as well. So yeah, check us out. We're on all the socials and obviously YouTube as well. And yeah, thanks for having me again, guys.
Pleasure. Dave, I'll let you go. You take care. I'll speak to you soon.
Cheers, guys. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Cheers, boys.
Thank you, mate.
Bye.
Great to have Dave on. Great guest as always. And like I said, Chris, he was one of our originals
he was,
on the channel. But look, we're not going to stop here. We're going to keep going. And look, if you haven't already, and I think Chris might have the button ready potentially.
Oh, the button,
If you haven't already, click like and subscribe. Get those likes up. Get the algorithm up. Get us on the way to 7K with your subscriptions. But equally, your likes will allow the algorithms to get this show and this channel further and wider, to make sure you support all things Loaded Mag NUFC. But as I said, we're not going anywhere. We've still got a little bit to discuss from a Newcastle perspective. So, looking at the team, the teams are out. Dave's given his opinion on all things Wolves and where he thinks will win the game. But equally, we've got a Newcastle team here. And Keith, Chris has put his team out. Do you agree? Would you change? Are you going to do anything to change that lineup? Or are you happy with how it looks? What are you thinking? How are you going to critique this?
I think it's as Chris said. Unfortunately, the options seem to be becoming more limited on a week-to-week basis, really, don't they? Unfortunately. Back four picks itself, for sure. That's your strongest back four. You don't change a back four. Hopefully, Botman's back in the sides soon to make it the strongest back four that we're going to have. But yeah, that's pretty strong at the moment. Yeah, Bruno and Longstaff interchanging as normal. I think this game here, I wouldn't disagree with any of those choices that Chris has got in his starting lineup. I think for me, it's interesting to see what options we have in the second half to try and push for a win if the score is level later on in the game. So, for instance, one of the few bright spots about yesterday was seeing Willock back for Newcastle and get 20 minutes. Does he come on again for a similar amount, or 15 or 20 minutes maybe tomorrow? Those fresh legs, in the middle of the park.
Do you know what, Pete?
Go on, Chris.
Sorry, Pete. I was just going to say, I started laughing when you were scrolling along, because when you were scrolling along the bottom of the screen, like every player you see, you go out, 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 out. I think it'll be interesting. I don't know about Keith, but I think it'll be interesting to see who we name on the bench.
Yeah, it's you're absolutely right, because you look across here, just across there, you got Harvey Barnes out, Murphy out, Isaac out, Miley out. And then you go across, you've got Richie, probably going to get a place on the bench. Anderson out. Willock in. Tonali, season's over. Lewis, possibly in the squad. Well, in fact, he will be in the squad. Target will be in the squad. I'm going to put it out there to you, because I mentioned to you guys on the watch along. I thought Target did all right when he come on.
Yeah, he did.
Do you think he's going to be someone that gets more minutes? People on the watch along talked about his delivery, his free kick where Wilson hit the bar. But some of his deliveries and some of his play on the ball was confident. Do you think that's going to be an option at some point in this game?
I think he's a certainty for Old Trafford, personally. I think he will definitely play at Old Trafford, because once we get this game out the way and touch wood, and Keith mentioned about Joe Willock earlier and saying, maybe come on the 70th minute. Joe Willock is going to have to get wrapped up in cotton wool majorly, because he could potentially be our only real, established attacking threat to come off the bench. So if he gets injured, we're knackered. So we've got to really, really look after Joe Willock. But yeah, I to answer your question, Pete, yeah, I think Matty Target is almost a certainty to play against Man United at Old Trafford, and I think Eddie Howe's going to bring the changes, and it wouldn't even surprise me, looking along that list at the bottom. Wouldn't surprise me if we saw Matt Ritchie play. Wouldn't surprise me if we saw Javier Manquillo get a game. I genuinely think he's going to have to rest players, because he can't play this 11 against Wolves, then Man United, then at the following weekends, and then potentially, you know what I mean? There's too many games.
We've got Arsenal after Man U.
Too many games.
Arsenal
many
at St
games.
James's. So it's a fair point. Do you agree with that, Keith?
Yeah, is there a point? Is there an opportunity as well to bring the likes of Livramento in? You know, because Livramento had a brilliant debut. I would certainly suggest, you know, going down. You certainly need to be either Livramento featuring in this game at some point as a substitute, or the game at Old Trafford, as you were saying, Chris, against Man United away. It's just an opportunity. You know, it's a difficult situation, but difficult situations can bring out opportunities.
Yeah, they can.
And we've seen, you know, way back when, you know, 2006, I'm going back years here, but in the UEFA Europa League away to Palermo, look at Tim Krul get his debut. You know, that was through an injury situation, and we know what happened there. So there's opportunities here. Really, it is a difficult situation. You know, we don't want to see as many injuries as we have. We don't want the Tonali situation either, but that's the hands that we've been dealt. And we've just got to try and adjust to it. Now, Newcastle, especially last year, coped well in adversity situations by shuffling the pack when they needed to.
Definitely. There's an interesting question here, and I'll pop it up. So apologies if I missed anything out, Chris. David asked, but guys, do we rotate rest Wilson over the coming weeks? If Gordon goes up top, then who goes out wide? Matt Ritchie must be on the verge of making the bench.
I agree.
All great points, but from David R. I've just seen that, so I just thought I'd put it on there. You boys agree with that, Chris? Keith?
Yeah, no, I agree with David there. I think this is where we have to, you know, delve into the squad. And Eddie talks about, doesn't he, utilizing the squad, using the players. And I do genuinely think that's what we're going to have to do, because again, you know, this is probably our strongest 11 that we can select at the moment. However, we can't play the next 3 games, which are coming up within a week. We can't play these 11 players for 90 minutes. We just can't. So we're going to have to utilize the squad. Keith's right. There's going to be opportunities. I think we're going to see Livramento playing. We're going to see Lewis Hall playing. We're going to see Matt Ritchie playing. And I'm not opposed to that. I just hope that, you know, we can come out the traps, try and put the game to bed, and then maybe it's time to kind of rest a few players and give a few lads a little run out.
Absolutely. I was just about to say that, Chris. Actually, you know, if Newcastle are in a really comfortable winning position, a couple of goals up before half time, a couple of goals up early in the second half, do we see some of those changes just to try and see the game out, but rest a few of our more experienced players' legs, starters' legs in that game? The likes of a Ritchie, the likes of a, you know, certainly a Livramento or a Manquillo coming in.
No, I completely agree. That bench, to me, when the picture comes out before the match, I will be focusing particular attention on what the bench is, because for me, I think the 11 picks itself, so that I can't really foresee any big surprises there. But the bench is going to be particularly interesting to see who gets an opportunity. Who knows if we don't see a couple of youngsters even who we haven't even got in the squad there. He could have to call some youngsters up from the youth team and say, go on, you know, you might get a few minutes here. And it's good for them to be in and amongst the squad. I mean, off the top of our heads, lads, is there any players in the reserves that we think, oh, you know, they may be given an opportunity to kind of step up?
Is it Ben Parkinson? Who came up? He played against Brighton. He went up top. Come on off the bench, played against Brighton. He's played a couple of under-23 games as well. I say a couple more than that. He started a number of under-23 games. I'm thinking of strikers, because I'm thinking, obviously, of course, with Wilson, we are going to need to manage him. He's not going to be able to play 90 minutes every game. And there's a few people in the chat that have actually mentioned that. I've not been able to star their comments, but they mentioned it. So I think that's a valid point. Like, Callum Wilson has been able to go out and give 60, 70 minutes flat out, knowing that he's going to be subbed off, and he's knowing how many minutes he's going to play. So he's given everything for that amount of time and then come off. Because in the later part of the game, is when you're likely to pick up injuries, and that's the way they've managed him.
Mm.
Now we've not got another option. Who is there? Like someone in the chat said Gordon. It might have been Jordan Fly or somebody else.
Yeah, it was.
Said Anthony Gordon. Anthony Gordon's not a striker. He played there. He's done that job. But ultimately, in the Premier League, it's very different to the under-23s playing up top as a frontline striker. So,
I'm being honest, Pete. Do we want to run him into the ground? Because
Exactly.
that's a dangerous thing to do.
You have to think now as well, with a lot of the changes that VAR has forced through as well, impacting on the game. Games are now going beyond the old standard 90 minutes plus a minute added on time. You get games now which go towards 100 minutes, and that sort of times difference really. So the pacing yourself for 90 minutes, it's beyond that now with all the stoppages and everything. So really, I don't think it's feasible to run Wilson into the ground. I think we have to try and make do and mend and think of what options we've got here to bring people on. If you look at last season, the opportunities that were given to the likes of Elliot Anderson, and years ago in the bad old days when, people emerged like Sean Longstaff, like Matty Longstaff. So there's opportunities here for, as you say, Pete, the under 23 to try and feed them in at the latter part of a game. If Newcastle are comfortable, put themselves in that shop window, and then maybe get an opportunity at Old Trafford or one or two of the upcoming games.
Yeah. Why not?
And more so in this team than any other team is that they're going to get that opportunity. Eddie Howe will, if he needs to, if he feels he needs to, he will throw them in if he feels they're ready. And Jordan, to corner phrase, great to have you in the chat, by the way, to corner phrase, said yes, Parkinson and Turner Cook. Now I think Turner Cook might be on loan, but Turner Cook was a player that also played in pre-season, and he had a really good loan spell at Tranmere. And I remember watching him against Northampton last game of the season, and he played really, really well. And yes, it was a few divisions down, but he was having a good loan spell. He was playing well. He was one of their main players, and he come back hungry. Not saying he's going to get an opportunity, but Ben Parkinson may well get that opportunity. Certainly in the squad, more so than anything. It's going to be interesting. Jamie Burton said J7 got to be the best option for Wilson. Would you have considered that, boys? J7 back up top again? He hasn't been up there since the Bruce days.
I mean, he's a different player now, different personality. I don't think he would get lost in the role like he did previously, because obviously he's established now. He knows the team, he knows how we play, and I think he's got a renewed confidence which he didn't previously have last time he played up front. Me personally, I think we need Joe Linton, a fully fit, fully playing Joe Linton in the middle of the park, or possibly on the left. Maybe to replace Anthony Gordon. I don't know if I'd play him up top because I just wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to go back to them old days. I just want to keep him knowing what he's doing, knows where he needs to be. I can see why Jamie said it, because we are a little bit limited in options. But genuinely, I think, especially like what we were discussing earlier, if we're a couple of goals up and there's 20 minutes to go, I'd rather give a youngster a run out and just say, listen, you know the drill. You know how you play. Just pretend you're playing for, the reserve team or the under-23s, whatever you want to call them, and just play your game. They'll have had some minutes out in pre-season and stuff like that. I'd rather see an out-and-out striker playing in the strike position than try and fit someone in there and potentially, I'm not saying this would happen, but potentially ruin the confidence.
We need Victor Boniface.
Yeah.
It was said in the chat earlier, but Chris knows we talked about him probably the back end of last week, over the weekend. Victor Boniface scored tonight against Leverkusen.
I was going to say, is he playing tonight? Yeah.
I think they're currently 4-1 up in the Europa League. He scored again. Victor Boniface.
Oh, 5-1 up.
Oh, 5-1 up, is it? I just checked literally 10 seconds ago. So that's
5-1 up, and Victor Boniface just got an assist.
If you don't know about Victor Boniface, go and check him out. I think it might have been Jordy Toon for Life that mentioned him in the chat, but we've talked about him for at least a week now. If you want if you want a Denver bar revamp, he is that guy. Victor Boniface, absolute quality. He would be 100% a great signing for Newcastle United. I don't think we'll get him in January, but I think we'll get him in the summer, and I would pay the money, whatever it would take to get him. He is the Nigerian striker, alternative to Osimhen. I think you'd get him for a lot cheaper. I think he'd be just as good. But if we only had one of them right now as an option, we would be worried about Alexander Isak being injured right now. But hey, we'll be there very, very soon. What I just wanted to say before we move on, just looking at the team, what we didn't talk about is areas of play. So I think Callum Wilson exploits these areas here. I think he's got the beating of Dawson. Max Kilman is playing really well in this position. I don't really know too much about Totti, I've got to be honest. Don't know if you guys know any more about him, but apparently he's been having a good season for them. I think it'll be really, really interesting what Callum Wilson does to exploit these areas in here. One-on-one, I think he's got the beating of Dawson in and behind him. I think he's got the strength to hold him on. Aerially, not so much. So the ball needs to be played in on the ground on his into feet. Here, if it's one-on-one, and I think Anthony Gordon's got the beating, but I think we've got an interesting defensive problem here and here. I think the interesting thing about this is that normally in this situation, and I'll take these off for a second, is that Joe Linton tends to come back here to protect in this area there. But because they play with three at the back and they've got a wing back, what you're going to find is Tomato is going to be overlapping in there. So they're going to be isolated as a one-on-one. So Joe Linton's actually going to have to cover in there or cut it off there. And I think it's going to be really interesting how we manage that. Now, how did we manage it against Dortmund? Not very well. They got the better of us, but these aren't the same team as Dortmund. They don't play in the same way. They've not got the same structure. And that's what I do worry about. I think Trippier needs to be careful because he's been getting forward so many times here that Hwang likes to get in here. And we got punished by that with Borussia Dortmund last time, 24 hours ago. So I do worry about that. Again, Ait-Nouri likes to make these moves into that space as well. So it's going to be really interesting because normally I talk about how we're going to affect the team and how we're going to make the difference. But actually, at Molineux, I do worry about what they've got if we go too attacking and too kind of gung-ho, what they could potentially do going forward. Where I do have confidence is this area here.
Yeah.
If they're going in with two and we're in with three, I think we dominate possession off these three into these areas here. I think we dominate this position here against Lamina and Traore. And I think at some points in the game, you're going to get, in my opinion, I think you're going to get him tuck in here and him tuck in there to try and combat that midfield three, which potentially could then have a positive impact on the likes of Gordon and Almiron out wide in these positions here. I want to see Gordon go out on his left and whip balls in more often, coming in from the left into these areas. Miggy, you're not going to get it from. I said to you boys, I was surprised when he whipped the ball into that area against Dortmund. But I think if we make it or they make it a narrow game, I think we can potentially exploit that position. Just before we move on, boys, have you got anything to want to add with regards to the lineup and the way in which we're going to set up?
I was just going to say it's all in phases for me. So when they're in possession and when we're in possession, I think it's going to be completely different because we're playing against this back five, like you mentioned there, Pete, about Semedo, potentially running down the line. It could even be communication's going to be key because it could even be that if Semedo gets down that line, Burn might track him. But if Burn tracks him, Joe Linton needs to be in that hole to sort Neto out. So it's going to be like that. But then from an attacking point of view, we then have an advantage to, dominate the midfield area, as you've been saying, through the middle of the park. And when Semedo and Ait-Nouri potentially cut in, it's then about us getting the ball out wide to make sure. Because for me, if you're right in what you say, if Gordon is in a one-on-one with Max Kilman or Miggy Almiron is in a one-on-one with Totti, it could spell big danger for them, because I think both have got the better of Totti and Kilman, because we know how quick Anthony Gordon and Miggy Almiron are. And not forgetting, if you've got Bruno Guimaraes, bombing through the middle of the park, Lamina and Traore are going to have the work cut out, because I'm assuming Joe Linton and Longstaff are going to be, kind of occupying those two players. And hopefully you could see Bruno kind of pushing through and really causing them some problems with the extra man in midfield.
I honestly think, Chris, I think it's a really good point, because normally you see Bruno pressing a midfielder in here, which vacates that position, which he did against Dortmund. And he's done it against other teams and got away with it, but he didn't against Dortmund, because he wanted to. We were encouraging to have that high press, and he presses that they're almost one defensive midfielder in Bruno presses the defensive midfielder of the opposite team, and he pushes away and presses this guy high up, in the hope that he wins the ball to spray it out wide to or into Wilson in these positions. But I actually think he needs to hold his position tomorrow. Saturday.
On reflection piece, just to touch what you've just said there about Dortmund. Sorry to cut you off. Do you think that Anthony Gordon and I'm not blaming Anthony Gordon here, by the way, do you think Anthony Gordon losing possession in the middle of the park had an impact on the fact that we didn't have anybody watching Mecha on the edge of the 18-yard box, given the fact that we lost possession so high up? So the likes of Longstaff, the likes of Bruno, the likes of Joe Linton weren't expecting the high press so quickly from Dortmund, and therefore we couldn't get back. It was just you saying that. I thought, you know what, you're right in that we were pushing and pushing and pushing, and Gordon did lose possession. And I'm not blaming Gordon, because he was very forward thinking and he was really trying to push us up the pitch. And in fairness, it was a good tackle. I know we were screaming for a foul, but it clearly wasn't a foul. Do you think that has any impact? You're saying about us being clever and making sure that we sit and make sure that we protect the two centre backs. Do you think that has an impact on the goal yesterday?
I mean, ultimately, it did have an impact on the goal because they scored from it. But I have to be honest, Chris, they had 3 or 4 other opportunities identical to the goal that they scored. And that wasn't because Anthony Gordon lost the ball. Now, people argue that he had his shirt pulled before he got tackled. For me, the tackle that was made to lose possession for him was a fine tackle. There was nothing wrong with it. But what I didn't like is the way in which they tracked. They didn't track the players on the counter attack. That's not Gordon's fault. That's the midfield, particularly the midfield 3, not doing their job. That's what I didn't agree with, and I think they could have been better. So, the way that Emeka goes into the box, and he has 4 or 5 yards around him when he receives the ball to take a touch, maybe even take another touch before he puts the ball in. For our detrimental reasons, he took one touch finish into the far corner. It was a brilliant finish, and he played really, really well, and fair play to him. But that is not down to Anthony Gordon. No. Anthony Gordon got tackled. He lost the ball. Fine. But the rest of the team needed to do the job to stop that ball going into the net, and they didn't. Because they didn't get back into position. Joe Linton sees Emeka and doesn't get there quick enough. He's too slow to react. Bruno Guimaraes, in the shot that I saw, wasn't in shot, which asks its own questions as a number 6. If you're not in shot, where are you? Like, why are you not anywhere within 2 or 3 yards within that player? That's the question I'm asking. Not about Gordon losing the ball or getting tackled. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah. No, it's fair. It's fair.
And I don't blame Gordon for that. It was a good run. Could argue he could have got a free kick, but he got tackled, and it was a fair tackle when the tackle did get made. I'm not going to make excuses on that, but I do think it's going to be interesting. I do think these boys are going to make these runs down here just because they're at home and they're going to want to press forward and try and get the win. But we need an early goal. I'm not saying 2-3 minutes in, 15, 20 minutes into the game, if we score the first goal, I'll probably leave it as that. If we need the first goal whenever that comes. I think we settle into the game and we're able to then potentially dictate the play. Man City lost to Wolves at Wolves because they conceded the first goal. And that put them under pressure. I think we need to do what other teams like to do against us, like Dortmund did on Wednesday, is they got the first goal. I think if we get the first goal, we've got a good enough team and a good enough squad of players to dictate the way in which we play to try and then get the 3 points. So the first goal is absolutely crucial. I hope they do their midfield too like this. I genuinely do. But let's see. Keith, before we move on, anything to add on that in your opinion?
Not really. I think I totally agree that first goal is really important, really. It's how Newcastle respond, really, to this temporary setback against Borussia Dortmund, really. I think it's interesting as well that in some other games, I'm thinking particularly the Man City game in the Carling Cup, there was a style of play that just completely surprised me, really, and surprised a lot of fans in that Newcastle stood strong and they weren't on the front foot for the first 30-35 minutes of that game. And I'm just wondering, could we see some of that type of play come back in at some stage, particularly if Howe has to ring the changes a bit more and due to injury, could we see some of that come in? But what interested me, particularly in that game against Man City, was Newcastle. They didn't commit early in that game. They managed to it was like rope-a-dope almost. They managed to absorb some of the attacks and sort of City burnt themselves out. Could we try that tactic on some of the oppositions again, some of these upcoming games that we have, instead of the high press all the time? And because it did throw City off that night, that's for sure.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
No, you're absolutely right. It is a very, very good point. So we'll end the kind of lineups on that. And there's a couple of questions, Chris, I want you to go through. There's one from. There's a few that are aimed at Dave, and obviously they've had to go. But I think there's one from Daniel Much around Max Kilman.
Yeah, that's it there, yeah.
He said he would be my Wolves player of choice. Would you guys have Max Kilman at Newcastle?
I think Max Kilman looks a fairly decent player. He's a player I know that I'll say I know. I don't know, but there's been a lot of reports previously that we've looked at him, that he's on the list, if you like. And I think there certainly looks to be a player there. And as we've said loads of times before, if anybody can, coach a player to become even better, then it's Eddie Howe. So yeah, I don't think Daniel Much has made a bad job there.
Interesting. Keith?
Yeah, he's had a solid run at Wolves, hasn't he? He's been there quite a while now, so he's been well established at Wolves, particularly in the last 2-3 years. He's been ever present in the Wolves side, hasn't he? So that's for sure. He's done quite well for himself.
We've got two more questions, and I'm going to end on the question from Geordie TOON for Life because, and I complimented Geordie TOON for Life on this question because I don't think we've ever been asked it before, and it's a good one. But I must say, Jamie Brewerton, and maybe this is in bad taste, Jamie, and maybe I don't want anyone to be offended by this, but Jamie has actually raised a good point, and he's sorted out one of my bets for the weekend. Because Jamie asks, and I think it's a great shout, if Bruno gets a yellow card this weekend, then that means he misses the Man United game, the cup game. And he's put here, was Pope the same last year? Obviously, Pope got the red card, so he missed the final, which is absolutely right. But I do believe that when you get 5 yellows, it can cross over into a cup game. Anyone in the chat, please tell me if that's wrong. But what I wanted to ask you boys, and Jamie's actually said a bit further down here as well, can you confirm if Bruno gets a yellow, he misses the cup game? I think that is correct, Jamie. Pete, Keith, you may disagree.
Yeah, was there a situation before the cup final as well? Bruno got a red, didn't he? Before a few games before, and we were was it the semi? And we were worried that he would miss the final, but because we had enough league games, he came back.
It meant he made the final. Yeah,
and he made the final. Yeah, 3 games.
Yeah. Do we know this, Pete? I'm pretty sure it does. But what I wanted to ask you boys is a little added question onto that. Do you think Eddie Howe, take away the injuries for the moment, do you think Eddie Howe was probably looking at maybe resting Bruno for this Man United game? I'm saying remove the injuries from this question. Obviously, it has to be a factor. But for me, especially with Arsenal coming up as well, I wonder whether Eddie Howe thinks, you know what, this could be the time to rest Bruno. And I don't think anyone would criticise Eddie Howe given the amount of injuries we've got, given what the result last night. I do fully expect him to ring the changes for that Old Trafford game. But Pete, I'll go to you first. What are your thoughts on that?
I've just looked into it, and it says in here, any player earning 5 bookings from his side's first 19 Premier League matches will serve a 1-match ban in the same competition. It says yellow cards are not carried over to the EFL Cup or the FA Cup. So that, I don't know whether that's relating to the first 19 games. I don't know, because Keith's right in what he said, because we were worried that he was going to miss the Carabao Cup final.
Yeah.
Because of his red card.
But is that because it was after the first 19 games?
It's an interesting stipulation. That's how I'm reading that. It's a very strange rule, because why does it need to change after 19 games? Which makes sense, because that red card was in the second half of our season. But it's the defining the action there, that if it doesn't apply, and it only applies to league matches. So if Bruno were to pick up on that basis, if Bruno were to pick up a yellow, he would be able to play Arsenal. And it would miss Arsenal.
Interesting. Really interesting. If anyone knows the answer to that question, I've searched it up and it came back.
Jordan Team for Life said that he'd 100% miss the Arsenal game.
Given our record against Arsenal.
Yeah. Yes, because obviously we've got Man U in between, so he would still be available for the Man U game, but not the Arsenal one. So,
but then my other question would be then: so if Bruno got a yellow in the Man United game, does he not miss Arsenal as well?
Well, this is the thing. I don't know. I don't know whether the cup games still relate to the Premier League, but the Premier League doesn't necessarily to the cup. Like
you still haven't played 19 games though. If you're applying it of domestic British UK games, it's just if you throw in a couple of the Champions League games that you get close to 90 in a different competition, isn't it? Really UEFA. So I think it's the way I'm reading it is if it's 19, it's either full league or 19 with cup games, like domestic cup games. So
interesting.
And we've got to remember that I think the red card that he got against, was it Southampton? I think it was a straight red. It was a straight red, whereas these are cumulative bookings.
Yes,
the difference between the Carabao Cup.
Anthony Gordon's situation was quite, that might have been similar in that he had to miss a game recently because he'd accumulated a number of bookings.
Yeah. Interesting one.
Yeah.
Last question, and again, I don't think we've been asked this before, so I'm going to ask both you boys this. Here is an unusual question, something different. If you had to change your current stadium for another stadium in the Premier League, which stadium would you choose? Now, I had an instant answer for this, and then I changed my mind for obvious reason, really. But Keith, I'll go to you first. If someone said to you, you can't have St James's Park anymore, or we're rebuilding St James's Park, you can pick whatever Premier League stadium you want. What one would you pick for us to play in?
Tottenham. Yeah, that's just a one-word answer. No, seriously.
Yeah.
What I would say with that is, I think with Tottenham's grounds, I mean, I've been there. I've been on the roof as well there as well, doing the skywalk. But I just think I was just super impressed with the facilities, I went to the bars and everything, and the view of the ground. And even when the ground first opened up, I was impressed by the character of the ground, in that it was a modern facility, but it still retains some of the old White Hart Lane features.
Yeah.
And it's more or less on the same site. So imagine if we didn't have some of those land obstacles that we have at St James's, and we could spread out St James's a bit further. That would be brilliant if we could adopt that sort of model and it be the same. I can see if in the future Man United, maybe if things change with their sort of ownership or with their funds, maybe they could adopt something similar for the north, for Old Trafford, where they incorporate their car park and make it a much bigger Old Trafford using that Tottenham model. So yeah, for me it's got to be the Spurs stadium.
Pete?
I'll probably go Everton.
I thought you hated the place, Pete.
Would
I remember you went and you weren't happy at all with that experience, but I guess it's got the old intimidating factor, hasn't it, in that fans are close to the pitch.
I was joking. I would not take Everton. No chance.
But Pete, the question is, and this could give you a hint as to where my mind's working. One, you get to come and see me a lot more because I'm in Liverpool.
That's true.
And two, are we picking old Everton or new Everton?
Wow.
Because the new stadium is looking very good, I must say.
And to be fair,
they've never kicked a ball in it.
Yeah, and they probably won't. They probably won't the way they're going.
Yeah.
But I'm joking. When I said Everton, and Join the Team for Life caught onto that very, very quickly. There's two stadiums that I'd probably pick. Tottenham Hotspur. I agree with Keith. Chris, we've been there. It's a superb stadium.
Yeah,
it's a superb. It is probably one of the best in the Premier League, easily the best in the Premier League.
Yeah.
But I think for locality reasons, I'd maybe consider Celtic Park.
Oh, okay.
The atmosphere that they create when they're there would be perfect for Newcastle United fans. The atmosphere that they create and what they generate. You know when you particularly hear it on Champions League nights and you hear the roar and you hear the fans get behind them, and it's very, very similar at times to what we created at PSG. And it's just like, I take that, and it's not too far traveling from Newcastle up there than it would be going all the way down to like a Spurs or somewhere else in the country. It's not that far north.
There's been some interesting part of murmurs again. I've seen in the last few weeks again about potentially Celtic Rangers again coming or being, a situation might force them eventually to be part of the EPL. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but it's interesting as well. And the question as well would be, I know it's Scotland, etc., and Celtic Park, Scotland, but would it have to be restricted to just football grounds that could, be developed for, could you maybe have Murrayfield? Because that's massive, Murrayfield in Edinburgh, isn't it? Was it about 75,000?
You've done it now, Jordan for Life. You've done it now. We're going
Cardiff, Millennium Stadium.
You want to hear mine?
To be fair to Jordan for Life, I changed the goalpost. I apologise because I took it out of Premier League and went to Scottish to the Scottish League. But for me, I was thinking of locality. I was thinking about Newcastle fans travelling. I was genuinely thinking about the actual opportunity for Newcastle to have an alternative stadium. That was just what I was thinking. But yeah, no, don't apologise.
No,
I think Geordie Toon for Life had suggested our friends down the road there, but the key thing was current Premier League, and I believe our friends down the road haven't been current Premier League for 7-8 years now. So yeah, that rules them out of the equation.
It does.
No chance, not a chance. Would you? Okay, I'm going to ask you a really quick question before we wrap up. Would you take Middlesbrough? Would you take the Riverside Stadium as an alternative? If and hypothetically, and this is for everyone in the chat that's watching right now, if Newcastle United were building a brand new stadium, maybe on the other side of the Leazes Park, and we were like generating to build a Tottenham-like stadium, bigger and better, obviously, would you take maybe for a year and a half playing at the Riverside Stadium? Would you take that?
Go on, Chris. I'll let you go first.
Do you know what? I don't know. And to answer the question, by the way, I obviously spent far too much time thinking about this because straight away, like Keith, I went Tottenham Hotspur Stadium all day long. And then the more I thought about it, I was actually like, no, do you know what? I would pick Everton's new grounds. And the reason being is because it would take me about 8 minutes to get there. So from a selfish point of view, it would be brilliant.
With 65,000 with a new build Anfield Road end.
I know. I think I like the idea of a brand new stadium. So I think like Goodison isn't really an option. But you know, the brand new sparkly stadium, and if we had the opportunity to just move in there and it was 10 minutes down the road from me, from a selfish point of view, I would love that as a Newcastle fan. But yeah, Riverside Stadium, yeah, because let's be honest, wherever we play, we know that we're then moving into a brand new, lovely state-of-the-art stadium. So I think for me, you would just have to, you know, bite the bullet. Better than going to the Stadium of Light. So yeah, I think people would accept the Riverside for a year, 18 months.
It takes about an hour. It takes about an hour to travel there, doesn't it? Really, to the Riverside, I think, from Newcastle. But I'm not sure how receptive the Borough fans would be towards Newcastle as well. It's been a while since that rivalry's been there, and I mean, obviously, we would pay, wouldn't we, for that? You know, we would pay rent, like a rental fee for however long it would take. But I think realistically, if when St James's gets developed and we need to not be in the ground, I think they'll probably do some in it. PIF will do some innovative way. Maybe they could utilize the Gosforth Racecourse Stadium and put like sort of a temporary stands there, or some part of the city where they could just put some temporary stands up. You can just see them coming up the Tyne now, can't you? Something like that, really, and develop that, because I remember in the 90s there was controversy and problems when he even suggested going down to Gateshead, you know, Gateshead Stadium, and that's just over the river. So I think eventually that'll probably be what happens. That is a big if Newcastle need to vacate the stadium while the stadium gets redeveloped.
Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. Right. Before we end the show, we've got to get to those predictions. And let's see what happens with that. But Anatol's put in there a question for you, Chris. I'm praying for a 12-point deduction. That would be music to my ears. I don't know if it would be music to your ears, Chris, because of the aggro you might get from the
I'll be like that
household. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's been rumors of it, but no, I don't think it'll happen. I've just said to Alan, I don't think it'll happen. I think it'll be suspended if they give it.
I think it'll go to arbitration if the word Premier League would to do that. I think that
what would be
Man City,
interesting.
I think they look at Man City and I think they challenge it, Chris.
Yeah, they would. But what would be interesting is if it is suspended or they sanction it for next season, if they're in the championship, imagine having 12-point deduction in the championship. That's going to be nasty. And even if they stay up, they're going to then come into the next season in the brand new stadium minus 12 points. So whether it's now or next season, it could have a big impact.
For sure.
I'm just smiling there thinking, not at the situation and that. I'm just thinking, if they get a new ownership, and if it be the 777 and then they've got a club that have just been deducted 12 points and they're in the championship, they'll be like, this ain't what we've signed up for.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll get the 777. There's already question marks about it.
I think that that could again be a partial, a bit like Sir Jim Ratcliffe at United. I think it would be some kind of partial investment thing that goes on because they don't really seem to have the money, or they seem to be sort of unraveling, really.
Yeah, definitely. But boys, prediction time. We're going to get those predictions in. People have already put theirs in the chat. Some go for a draw, some go for a Newcastle win. I'm going to go for a Newcastle win. I'm going to stick to my 2-1 prediction that didn't come to fruition against Borussia Dortmund. I'm going to go for it. 2-1 Newcastle United. Chris, I'm going to come to you. What are you going for, fella?
Sorry, you probably see me all agitated. My battery's flashing, so I thought, God, I better quickly get it in. I'm going to say 2-1 Newcastle. I agree with you, Pete. I think we'll sneak it 2-1.
Excellent. And Keith, Dr. Doom, what are you going for this week, fella?
Well, this is going to be a tough game on tired legs. Wolves have had those extra days to recover. Newcastle haven't. Got a couple of tough games. A couple of injuries racked up as well. So Newcastle are going to have to respond and be at their very best on Saturday after the disappointment yesterday. And it's going to be a tough one. I think Newcastle are going to need all the luck in the world for this result to come through. They're going to need all the decisions from the referee, and they're going to need all VAR to be switched on for this result to come through. Because I'm predicting that.
I thought it was a win.
Yeah.
I was so excited. I thought we go for
10 out of 16 out of this game have been a draw in the Premier League. So I think 10, again, I think it'll be another draw. And 6 out of those 8 games Newcastle played at Molineux have been a draw. So I think it'll be another draw. Fingers crossed it'll be a draw, and fingers crossed the TOON get a point on Saturday and get a good result.
Fingers crossed, mate. But predictions are in. Lots of predictions in the chat. Get your predictions in before the show goes out. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you to our sponsors, the radiatorshed.com. Thank you to Russ and his team. And of course, thank you to everything that they do with the channel. Top quality materials made from plate steel, providing longevity, all designed and manufactured in Italy. Aluminium rods are environmentally friendly and are perfect for heat source pumps. They do a home survey service and will install if required. Massive thank you to those that support at the Bathroom Design H2O, the Northeast largest suppliers of Villeroy and Botch bathroom wear. Team Valley Gateshead, over 20 years established and run by the family. So make sure you get down to the showroom on 11th Avenue, Team Valley Gateshead, and make sure you support all things H2O. And no one's getting a shower tonight because it's on the far side of us all. But what we can see is some quality bathrooms in place. And thank you for your support, Russ and the team. Guys, superb show. Great to have Dave on from a Wolves perspective, talking all things Wolves. Thank you, Keith, for your perspective on stats and great opinions. I love it when you critique our lineups and you give your opinions on it. And
I just wish we had more players fit, and then I'd be able to critique with alternative options, as I'm sure we would all like to critique. But
fingers crossed we get people back soon. A Botman and an Isaac or one or two others back soon would definitely help things. That is for sure. Thanks to everyone in the chat. Make sure on your way out you click the like, click subscribe, you support the channel, and get it out there for others to see what we are doing on Loaded Mag NUFC. But for now, we'll let you guys go, and we'll be back for Loaded Reaction, should I say, on Saturday evening after the game, to keep an eye out for that tweet as well. But until then, we do love playing away. Chris, take us out, fella.
How'd you like that? How'd you like that?
How'd you like that, Keith?
How you like